All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure, of course, that that's actually the case over on Rumble. I do have my audio off, my tabs open, and made sure that they're all actually working. Usually important. Sometimes the archive spazzes out a little bit. Got lots of stuff to cover today, starting with Balloongate, of course, and Buttigieg's comments, which I did cover this morning. I will flesh out the Balloongate details a little bit more. And of course, breaking news, well, semi-breaking, we do have a second very powerful earthquake in south central Turkey as well. As of this time, the original quake, a 7.8, followed by a 7.5. So we'll be monitoring that situation. If any Turkish clankers happen to be out there, has damage extended? How far does the damage extend? Like Ankara, I'm sure was shaking. Was there any damage there in the capital? I can't imagine it got all the way to Istanbul. Probably damage down south too in Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, etc. So I'll be talking about that. And then we've got racist food to talk about. Another Biden lie, various other things. Conservatives angry about school indoctrination are telling on themselves, according to The Guardian. They're simping for CRT. So it's a packed news day. We'll get right into it once we refresh here and make sure we're live on Rumble. I believe we are. Yeah, we're live on Rumble. Excellent. I see that chat is indeed working there as well. We'll be talking about all sorts of crazy shit. First, we'll start off, though, with Balloongate. And I just wanted to give a recap, sort of an update here. It's a follow-up to my morning video, the main video that I did on the Balloongate bullshit that's going on right now. You are being propagandized too, just to be clear. Balloongate is a major thing. They're trying to do an apples to oranges comparison with similar events that happened under the Trump administration, because anytime that Biden fucks up, they wipe his ass, they keep his butt clean. By defaulting to Orange Man bad. I will be talking briefly about why it's not even an apples to oranges comparison in that case. Captain Cannabis, Morning Sticks, how was your weekend? Shout out to Alex. Yes, poor Alex, who can never catch a live stream. My weekend was good, actually. Last night, Liz cooked Asian-style omelets, which are really good. It's soy sauce and scallions. You might call them spring onions. Excellent. And rice, and then I did a stir fry of vegetables, although I wish that I had had some baby corn to throw in it. That's one of my favorites in a stir fry, or mushrooms, either one, it doesn't really matter. Ended up putting in some water chestnuts, giving a nice crunch. It was pretty good. I watched the Grammys for the Christine McVie tribute. I managed to keep my food down, says Jim Miller. Yeah, poor Christine McVie. You know, you get memorialized by a bunch of goofballs. Did you see Madonna's picture has gone viral, by the way, from the Grammys? I did not watch them and won't. I'm not interested in that kind of thing. Like, you know, the entertainment industry is vapid and shit. But we'll get right into meaningful news because celeb drama, it just doesn't really do it for me. Here's what happened over the last few days. A Chinese spy balloon, unperturbed, flew into U.S. airspace. We knew that it was a spy balloon, by the way. It was known. There was a gnosis involved there. Flew in over the Aleutian Islands briefly, over Alaska, part of Canada, and then drifted across the continental United States. We know it was a spying balloon. We know that it invaded U.S. airspace explicitly. I mean, there's no international law or agreement with regards to where your airspace begins or ends, but 60,000 feet is generally agreed upon to be your airspace. Just to be clear about what we're talking about, it's capable of being penetrated by some military aircraft. Therefore, ergo, it's part of your airspace. It's generally recognized that that's the case. If you float an object at that level over another country, it might get shot down. There's not really a whole lot you can do. The Chinese right now bitching about the fact that their balloon was brought down. It's like, well, it was under 60,000 feet in U.S. airspace, although off coast at the time, within sight of Myrtle Beach, no less. So, you know, cry more. There's nothing you can do about it. What the cope is right now with regards to that is that similar things happened under the Trump administration. There were 3 different incursions by Chinese balloons back then, you know, from 2016 to 2020. And I looked at the original report, and it is a .gov, so this is semi-official at least. There's a Bloomberg report that traces off of that has become the origin of all of the leftoid like craptivists, etc., and all that they're spewing out on Twitter right now. I'd like to debunk their narrative. First and foremost, the original release, which was embellished later behind closed doors to the legacy media, does not mention those balloons being military in nature. It doesn't mention their altitude. It doesn't mention where they incurred potentially on U.S. airspace. There is no recording, by the way, and I neglected to mention this in the morning video. As far as I can tell, there's no recording or eyewitness accounts of having seen that particular high altitude balloon or those balloons at the time. Now, because Orange Man bad, and because of constant leaking from the administration by people who within believed Orange Man bad, you would think that somebody would have noticed a Chinese spy satellite hovering around over Montana during the Trump years. It would have been fairly obvious. People would see it. People would record it. People would be like, what the fuck is that up in the sky? And it's a UFO. Quick, ma, grab the shotgun. You didn't have any of that now, did you? None of the original reporting mentions a military nature, spying, or anything like that. It simply says that Chinese balloons entered U.S. airspace at an indeterminate altitude in an indeterminate area. And I was thinking to myself, could they not have simply drifted briefly across the Aleutian Islands? If we don't know that they were spy satellites, could they have been literally weather balloons? In which case, you don't need to take any action. You know, a civilian weather balloon slips its tether. It's not exactly a national security threat. It's not just apples to oranges, it's apples to walnuts, as I branded it this morning. Nonetheless, what you see from the legacy media, from the buck coverers of the Biden administration, is that they're taking the initial report and they're presuming that they were military in nature. They're presuming that they violated explicit U.S. airspace by being too low over the continent. They're not telling you where in the continent they encroach, though, and they have no video or any photographic evidence or anything like that. Nobody is asking the question, by the way, I will reiterate. Why did Joe Biden give the order to shoot it down the second that it encroached on the continental United States? Was he not aware of the falling debris that was broadcast so widely for the subsequent 24 hours, supposedly post-order, from the U.S. military about why they couldn't shoot it down? Nobody is asking that question. Was Biden just completely out to lunch that day and said, well, there'll be no problem, just hit it with a missile or some shit. Go Top Gun on that bitch. Apparently, nobody's going to bother asking that. Secondly, if it was so difficult to bring down, that was another cope that we got over the prior 48 hours, rather, then why were you able to bullseye it out of the air so easily as soon as it was over water past Myrtle Beach? Why did you decide to do that when it was still relatively close to the shoreline, by the way? I mean, I know you want to recover the device, but supposedly falling debris is a big problem. You have a lot of brown and green watercraft in that particular zone that could potentially get hit with falling debris. Apparently, they don't matter as much as some farmer up in Montana, now do they? Very interesting. It's mainly because, and this is an objective claim, they wanted people to witness the downing of the balloon for propagandistic purposes. They wanted people at Myrtle Beach with their cameras to see the balloon get knocked out of the sky. They could have done it over Montana. They could have done it much further over the Aleutian Islands. It crossed over there in Alaska. Now, what lives in the Aleutian Islands? Nothing. There are some military bases and a handful of industrial ports. There's not much else going on up there. There aren't many people in the Aleutian Island chain. You could have shot it down at the time. You have air bases in that particular zone in the middle of the Aleutian Islands, and they neglected to do so. Supposedly, they jammed the balloon, but then the balloon was supposedly, according to the Biden administration's own calculations, capable of maneuvering and generally steering from one place to another by simply ascending or descending on air currents. So you didn't jam it. Or I suppose the controls would have likely jammed now, wouldn't they? If you were broadcasting some sort of signal up towards this balloon to knock out its capability of relaying back home, you would think its ability to steer, which would require it to communicate with back home based on common fucking sense, would have been knocked out as well. Again, a question unanswered as far as the legacy media is concerned. So right now, virtually all reporting on the Balloongate scandal, and that is what it is propaganda. Much of it is unevidenced. So it deals with anonymous sources and taking what those sources said and extrapolating from it in a wanton manner, I would say, extrapolating, well, there were 3 balloons under Trump to they were spy balloons and they were clearly in U.S. airspace, that logic does not follow. But of course, if you're going to defend Joe, if you're going to defend Stewart, Beijing, Biden, you have to simply say orange man bad. Well, it happened before, everyone. Don't worry too much. Keith Sparbaney, Rhino, New Hampshire governor, says Trump can't beat Biden in 24. Nobody cares what he says, though. Stormy Nova, that's a gorgeous plant you got. Which one? They're all gorgeous. They're producing oxygen for me to breathe. Ian O'Malley, haven't been able to catch live in some time due to upward mobility via new job. Had COVID yesterday, but I knocked it out in 24 hours. No vax necessary. Congrats to you on both counts. Stormy Nova, you're damn right. Alex Better, I finally made it. Damn it, impeach Brandon. Yes, he should be impeached for this. He should be removed for office for his dereliction of duty. It is specifically, constitutionally speaking, one of the primary functions of the commander-in-chief to guard the homeland. That was not done. They could have shot this aircraft, this balloon down over Alaska in a very, very remote area. They could have done it in such a way that they were able to recover it. It wasn't beyond our technological capability, apparently, because one F-22 was able to fire one piece of ordnance at it over Myrtle Beach and down it. So why couldn't we have done it on the other side of the country before it, went over all of our sensitive nuclear sites and a bunch of industrial sites in the heartland? Inquisitor Jack, in EW, you jam the receiver, not the emitter. Outas85, I like to think you wear your bathrobe to the grocery store. Please confirm. No, I just wear this because it's comfy. I happen to think that it's fun. Sigilstone17 on Rumble. Morning, Sticks. The Trump-era balloons came from the same place as the stability and legitimacy of fiat currency. Yeah, exactly. We don't even have proof that the balloons existed. We have a claim by an unnamed official within the Department of Defense. It's been reiterated, but then the reiteration elaborated upon the original claim. The original claim doesn't even mention spy balloons, doesn't mention a military purpose, incursion of airspace, or anything like that. If a balloon drifts briefly over the top of Montana for 5 minutes and then dips back up into Canada, you can't exactly shoot it down in that time frame, now can you? Stormy Nova, the top-heavy plant over your right shoulder. Yes, the umbrella plant. Yeah, it is. It's doing pretty well. Boycott Warhammer Plus. Did you see the AI sticks video I tagged on Twitter? Yes, I think I did, actually. Next news story. This is just my opinion within analysis, but I'm pretty good at this, so I'll give my opinion anyway. Buttigieg says he won't seek U.S. Senate seat in Michigan in 2024. Yes, he is eligible to seek a Senate seat, but he's not doing so. Here's my analysis. This is not because Buttigieg has some sort of loyalty to Biden. He enjoys his job. He likes running trains, and so, he likes being transport secretary. Buttigieg is aware of the fact that there is a fairly good chance that Joe Biden will not seek re-election in 2024. If he launches a Senate bid and he goes out from the administration, 2 things happen. Number one, if Biden does run again, he's not guaranteed to get the Senate seat. And in an incoming Biden admin, he's not guaranteed to have his job back. So that's not necessarily a positive gamble to make. I think, though, that it's more likely he expects Biden not to run. And so his position will no longer exist because either an incoming Dem or Republican administration presumptively replaces him. He has not done a particularly great job as transport secretary. We've seen evidence of this multiple times. So his job could be axed, even by an incoming Dem administration. Let's say Warren runs. She manages to win in 24. Does Buttigieg necessarily keep his job? No, especially if Biden stays in the primaries and there's bad blood between him and other candidates. Then he definitely doesn't get rehired. He can't seek the Senate seat for the same reason. He thinks that Biden won't run. And so he's going to seek the U.S. presidency. That is my read on the situation. I believe that Buttigieg expects Biden not to run. Regardless of what ends up happening with regards to the general election, he wants to be the candidate. And he is poised to potentially be that candidate. They should have done it in fucking 2020. Pete Buttigieg, of the mainline field that had any traction at all, was the most electable. I said it back then. I'll say it now. He would be electable now. He's younger. He's white and male, but he's also gay. So that appeases the neoliberals. The NPR cut people want you to check off one of the grievance categories. So you can be black, or you can be female, or you can be gay, or non-binary, or whatever. Or you can be, yada, 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 and non-Christian or whatever down the line. You can't be more than one, though. You need to be comfortably spicy. You need to be like a little dash of Tabasco sauce in the scrambled eggs. But you don't want to be ghost pepper sauce. Then they won't like you. Buttigieg checks the boxes for them. Now, the left fucking hates this dude. But that doesn't matter. That's like 20% of the party at this point. They are minority. If you can get someone who is young and at least somewhat well-spoken, somewhat competent and coherent, like Buttigieg actually is, we will admit to that, he has a better chance of winning that field. He's already ahead in New Hampshire, according to polling. He's potentially ahead and likely in Iowa. That's why Biden has decided to scramble the order of the primaries. If he does choose to run, and I think that the jury's still out on that, I don't think he's fully decided, and I think he leans against not running. If he does, though, South Carolina would be the one he would want to lead off with. He can win there, and then he can say, well, I lost in New Hampshire, but it doesn't really matter because New Hampshire is a lot older and whiter than the average in the country, so you should stick with me. That's why that shenanigan is afoot. Do I think that Buttigieg would win against Donald Trump? No, I think that it would be difficult for him. Would he win against DeSantis? Again, it'd be about the same answer. He'd be the underdog, I think. Honkening, of course, aside. We'll have to see what the Uniparty does in the next couple of years. Pay close attention to McConnell and McCarthy and Ronna McDaniel and people like that, and Bloomberg on the other side, supposedly. But that's what he does want. He wants a presidential bid. It's quite clear. It'd be funny to see him running against Ron DeSantis, by the way, if that were the Republican nominee. Inquisitor Jack, in other words, their jamming cope is nonsense. Yes, most likely. Parlock 480, I'm beginning to believe near-death experience claims, since they are mostly the same and people describe heightened senses and life is the shadow realm. Yeah, I think that near-death experiences are quite interesting. I don't think that it means you actually crossed over into some other realm. I think that largely it's mental. Ozzy's robots, left hand look balloons, right hand hides Pfizer. I would note that the Biden document scandal has conveniently disappeared from the headlines. You may have noticed this as well. Now, you probably did. Let's see here. Yes, now we have less levity in the current news. Turkey suffering a series of major earthquakes. Actually, there's a link in the description. Gaziantep Castle, and this is from the first quake, so it's rubble by now after the second one, which was built more than 2,200 years ago, collapsed during the earthquake. I have seen a great deal of footage posted on Twitter and elsewhere of the earthquakes happening there. We're talking entire city blocks wrecked. Massive fires because, of course, transformers explode, power lines go down, vehicles get fucked, and fuel is everywhere. Gas lines break. They had a 7.8 earthquake this morning, or rather, technically it wouldn't be morning, I think. I've got to get my time zones correct anyway, because, of course, I'm talking to a largely U.S. audience. Turkey's on the other side. I'm in the middle in the Netherlands, so bear with me. Turkey suffered a 7.8 earthquake. And then a few hours later, and not long ago, has suffered a 7.5. Now, anything above a 7 is a fairly catastrophically large earthquake. Even resistant structures can be damaged by those. 7.8, you've got to understand with the earthquake scale, every time you go up by 0.1, you're doubling the actual output energy of the earthquake. So a 7.0 is twice as bad as a 6.9. When you go from a 7 to an 8, you're talking about an entire order of magnitude. 7.8 is nothing to shake a stick at. 7.5 neither. It's still well within the limit of a catastrophic earthquake. There are not many earthquake-resistant structures in Turkey. There is a lot of slum housing, especially in that region of Turkey. A lot of ancient monuments and ruins. I'd be surprised if Göbekli Tepe hadn't been cracked and damaged from this too. When it was buried, not a problem. It's currently exposed, unfortunately. And you have estimates are saying there are thousands dead at this moment. Unfortunately, there could always be a Turkish clanker among them. I've seen some people, by the way, I'd like to call out some people that are talking about, 10 times worse, but yes, order of magnitude. I'd like to call out some people because they're like, Turkish people, Islam or whatever like that. A lot of people that are injured or killed in this kind of thing are children, just to be clear. Some people were off at work at the time, largely male in such a culture. And the kids are sitting at home and get buried by 15 feet of rubble. How lovely. There are some people that are actually thinking that's a good thing. So you've got archaeological ruins devastated. Again, according to this, Gaziantep Castle basically doesn't exist anymore. You've got, everyone suffering at the moment. I looked at some of the footage and the elevated highway system had completely collapsed. What I'm wondering is how far the damage extended, though, because of the geology of the area, a lot of mountainous and hilly areas in that part of the world. I'm wondering how far the damage extended. Certainly you would feel it in Ankara, for example, their capital. I'm wondering, there must have been at least light structural damage to some things there. It has to have extended down into Syria and Lebanon and places like that. You'd probably feel the shaking over on the border of Iran, So unfortunately, Turkey has suffered at least 2 very major earthquakes in the last 24 hours. I would caution anyone that's in that general vicinity, when, 300 or 400 miles of those epicenters, you might want to prepare for the possibility of more, because the aftershocks can still be large, number one. And if you have a large earthquake, a 7.8, and then a 7.5, there's no guarantee that's an aftershock at that point. That's could be a separate significant earthquake. The bottom could drop out and then you get a 10.0. So you might want to make sure you have some extra water and shit on hand if you're in that zone, because that's a huge amount of damage. Even the fucking aftershocks, 6.0 is going to damage things too. You've got a structure that's already teetering on the edge. It's already got some cracks and shit because of the original earthquake. And then for 2 or 3 days, you're getting significant aftershocks. That building may collapse. If you're in a damaged building in that zone, don't go back into it for any length of time. That would be a bad idea. You will probably die. Water systems will break down. Another big problem, and a lot of people don't realize this, in the wake of a large earthquake, you can have a pollution of the water system and end up with cholera. So be careful. You might want to boil your water for an extended period of time as well. Draven Ockloss, did you hear about the Satanic Temple Ritual Abortion Clinic article from Zero Hedge I found? No, I didn't. I heard that there was supposedly a satanic ritual at the Grammys. I saw part of that and I was like, oh, they're trying to get attention from people with small brains. It'll work too. They'll get extra airplay and they'll make more money, which is exactly what they want. And that's what their God is. It's not the devil. It's the Benjamin. Eric Hecker, my favorite news curator that warns of linguistic propaganda while using linguistic propaganda. I love the irony, just to be clear. Yes, everyone engages in linguistic propaganda, whether they know it or not. Some of us just are more aware of the fact that they're doing so. Peter is my first name. Any chance the China balloon was CCP trying to oust Biden for getting caught with the secret documents? No, I think that's a stretch. I think it's more to show up the United States at a point of weakness, when currently we don't have a real leader, we have a steward. Kenthis 15. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm trying to wrap my head around all the deaths in Turkey. I've lived through so many quakes of similar magnitude and was always told it was normal. I doubt that you've seen a 7.8. It's been a while since Los Angeles had a very, very large earthquake. 4 or 5.0 is fairly common there. 7.8 is a lot more powerful than that, number one. Secondly, in the area of California typically associated with quakes, there's a lot of retrofitting for earthquake resistance. A lot of Turkey has more what you would consider slab building, like commie block style. They don't do very well under seismic assault. And you have a lot of areas there that are underdeveloped. This is not the part of Turkey that's developed, like Istanbul, the area along the ocean near the Greek islands, etc., Bolu or something, or Ankara. This is the other side of the country. This is verging in on the Syrian border. So there is quite a bit of poverty. So you have multi-story structures that are effectively nothing more than slab. You even have mud brick structures. They're not going to hold up as well. Muddy Drip 6665. Careful who you donate through for aid. Many of those organizations are very shifty with the donations they get. Yeah, I would be more likely to just, do, I guess Red Cross maybe. Although they seem to have failed in Haiti. Wonder Blubber, $1. No comment. Thank you. Over on Rumble, Sigil Stone, 17. What are your thoughts on Ron DeSantis having Sheldon Adelson's wife on his advisory team after receiving money from them? Again, politics makes strange bedfellows. I'm not going to crucify him for that, but I will tell you one thing I will crucify Ron DeSantis for. He hasn't done it yet, but we'll see. As that bill that was proposed by the GOP in the House there in Florida would prevent people from even handing out billets if they contain hateful material, if he does not at the very least have that particular section parsed from that bill pending the potential signing of that bill, I would drop him like a hot potato. That would be an attack on the First Amendment writ large. It would be a bridge too far for me. Wonder Blubber, can you explain steward in reference to Brandon? Yes, he is the caretaker. He's not really in charge. He's being puppeted by other people who are making the real decisions. He's out to lunch. Everyone around him knows it. He's not allowed to make many of his own decisions, which is why the fucking Easter Bunny has to tell him not to talk to the kids too long. Things like that. He is the steward. He is not actually the leader of the United States. You can call him the president based on his office if you wish. That's perfectly fine. But he is ultimately a caretaker, a stand-in, an asterisk until the next person comes along who is properly capable of doing the functions of office necessary to fulfill their constitutional obligations. Plus, he's kind of like the steward of Gondor, when you think about it, towards the end when he goes crazy. Totally out to lunch, doesn't understand what the fuck is going on around him. No, it was already there when I got here, man. Biden, when asked if he takes any blame for inflation. Yes, this was a few days ago, but we're going to cover it anyway. I did hold this back through the weekend because, of course, I don't stream on the weekends, but it's still definitely worth mentioning. Joe Biden on Friday delivered remarks on the January jobs report from his fake White House set on the South Court Auditorium. Now, it's important to deviate into the topic of the jobs report briefly here. The jobs reports at this point, when they're showing considerable job growth, are not showing lowered unemployment. We've seen these fudgy numbers as of the last quarter. They're representing people taking out second jobs because they can't cope with the cost of living. People are taking out second jobs right now, working fucking 60 hours, 70 hours a week in order to buy eggs. Well, if a person gets a second job, that counts as job growth. But it doesn't mean that another person has been employed. It just means a person now has a side gig. A person who's already gainfully full-time employed, making 35, 40 hours a week, now has a side hustle. They're taking up an extra 15 hours because they got mouths to feed and stuff. If you want to call that a strong economy, then I got some fucking swampland in Florida to sell you. That is what is happening. It's already been analyzed prior to the jobs report. Now, with regards to inflation, Biden was asked about, inflation, which has lingered around, and said, well, it was already here. There was already significant inflation when Trump left office. No, there wasn't. Inflation was fairly historically low, number one. Number two, your own policies caused much of the rise of inflation. Not all of it, by the way. I realize that my camera right now is being a little bit... here, just a sec. Can you see me now? Good. Anyway, that's number two. Inflation was historically low. Biden's proposals caused much of the inflation we're seeing. It's roughly linear. It's not actually falling at the moment, or only very slightly. He's lying flat out to the American people. Now, thankfully, most of the American people, when they go to the store, when they go to the gas pump, etc., they understand that Biden's lying. They probably have at least enough attention span to remember the way things were under Trump. Most of them even some liberals, I hazard a guess, remember that period economically more fondly than the current period, which they should because it was better in various respects. But Biden is being disingenuous, and I noticed that the legacy media is not fact-checking him on this. This is now 3 days old, this news. I saw the Gateway Pundit talk about it. I saw Breitbart, I think, covered it. I didn't see anything on CNN, and I'm wondering why. Lots more chats. King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Still got to get some of that good shit. Ozzy's Robots, do you think it's a missed opportunity for Trump not to call out Pfizer and censorship? He attacks DeSantis but says little about Brandon. Weak strategy. I do think Trump needs to make his pivot. My hope is that at some point he makes it. I've already laid out exactly how he should word it and phrase it. It would debilitate the Democrats. It would lock down the Republican field and basically ensure his reelection. He has not chosen to do that yet. It would be tied with returning to Twitter. I think he smells a trap and figures if he returns there, he's just going to end up getting banned like a month before the election or something like that. Miller's Meat Locker. I just got here. Did I miss the Second Revolutionary War? No, not yet. Elianne Aisland. Hi, what does dreaming that you have insomnia means? I also dreamt that my back was growing cheese that I used to make salad. My brain is officially canceled. P.S. Do you think Sweden will join NATO? Sweden's been locked out of NATO, ironically, by multi-quake hit Turkey as of today. That was a few days ago. That's basically off the table. I think they've withdrawn their bid. NATO probably will not expand for some time. I don't know what those particular dreams mean. Yeah, I mean, you can look it up on Google, but you might get a lot of New Age stuff. You can look back through dream interpretation manuals. Use archive.org if you want. Like there are 1,000 different oracles on there. You can look those up on there. Be more authentic as far as older traditions. Peter is my first name. Trigonometry YouTube live chat has the funniest live chat. Do you know the channel? Thanks. No, I don't actually. I've thought about getting rid of the, since I can see the super chats at the top here on StreamYard, I've thought about getting rid of the 60-second limit on chatting in chat itself. Maybe I'll experiment with that tomorrow so that people can just ship post. And then you end up with a bunch of spammers, but yeah, entertaining, I guess, could be a word to describe it. The next news story is definitely much more funny than the unfortunate tragedy unfolding in Turkey or in the United States right now with Balloongate. New York school and food vendor apologize for serving chicken and waffles on first day of Black History Month. The food vendor has agreed to take part in racial sensitivity training. I'm going to read through a little bit of this verbatim. A New York middle school is apologizing after serving students with a meal on the first day of Black History Month that was deemed to be culturally insensitive. I do have to kind of sort of agree with that. We'll get into it a little bit further. Administrators at Nyack Middle School say the hot lunch menu was changed by the vendor without their knowledge on February 1st, the first day of Black History Month, to include chicken and waffles with a watermelon dessert, which the school's principal called an unfortunate situation, the Journal News reported. We are extremely disappointed by this regrettable situation and apologize to the entire Nyack community for the cultural insensitivity displayed by our food service provider. Nyack Middle School Principal David Johnson said in a statement, I am disappointed that Aramark would serve items that differed from the published monthly menu. That really becomes the problem because you specifically decided to deviate on the first day of Black History Month. I'm thinking that whoever made that decision in the Excel document probably meant to do so. Just to be clear, we'll admit to that one. Especially items that reinforce negative stereotypes concerning the African American community. Now, that's a little bit of a stretch. Can you actually prove that that is what happened with this vendor? I'm thinking probably not. You can infer it. You can assume it. If you assume that fried chicken and watermelon has ethnic connotations, and in some parlance it does, I'm not understanding how you can actually prove that. There were families, they complained to the principal, and then the principal obviously is like, oh shit, this is an ass covering situation, code red, blame the vendor. Yeah, we still served it. We looked at it days before. We knew what we were going to be serving, but it's the vendor's fault. They decided to change it in short notice. Don't you have other foods on hand that you could feed them? And it's all swill anyway. To be clear, it doesn't really matter what they feed to the kids because it's all bullshit. Fried chicken and waffles with a likely over-sugared, artificially flavored watermelon dessert is unhealthy. It would be the same if you served them literally anything else from Sodexo or one of these other vendors in that cater most public schools. The public school Meals in the United States are horseshit. By the way, to people that think that the Netherlands is a socialist nation, they do not provide free school lunches in Dutch schools. They give the kids the ability to go out or to bring their lunch, just to be clear. It's considered a personal and parental responsibility. Interesting how people in the United States are trying to push free school lunches for every child, at least under a certain income, when those school lunches are basically fucking goddamn poison. Ever eaten them? I never ate school lunch when I was in middle or high school. I did in elementary school. It was a little bit better back then, I think, once in a while. But normally my mom packed my lunch. Later on, I packed my own lunch. And then in high school, I didn't fucking eat lunch. I was too busy doing my homework from the first few periods while drinking a thermos of tea. Occasionally, I'd have a snack. One time in high school, I had school lunch. One of my friends there at the kind of nerdy table that I tended to sit at, he had, if I remember correctly, a chicken sandwich, and he didn't want it. He's like, anyone want the chicken? And I said, okay, fuck it, I'll eat it. And I gorged on it and choked it down. It's, it's just a microwave chicken patty with buns. That's all it, and some mayo on it, and that's all it is. Not really worth it. Cold Summer 91, thoughts on My Pillow guy. I am not a fan of Mike Lindell. He is a grifter. I realize that this rankles some people when I say so. You'll see it eventually. His time will come, and then it'll be just like Ann Coulter, Ben Shapiro, and others that I've labeled similarly, and people will think I'm some sort of oracle for pointing out the obvious. Ligma Weenus sent $5. I can't lick my own weenus. I don't have, what's his name, that dude from Kiss? I can't remember his name because I don't like Kiss as a band. Gene Simmons? Or am I thinking of the wrong one? I know there's that exercise guru who has a similar name. I don't know. Richard Simmons, Gene Simmons? I think Gene Simmons is the rock star. Richard Simmons is the one that wore, pastel colors and, talked about arugula and shit. I don't know. Both similar levels of talent. I think that Richard Simmons is a little better. By the way, he hasn't been seen in public for years. Just saying. Mr. Roman, first time donating, following your content since 2015. Keep up the good work, sir. Best wishes for you and your family. Thank you very much. They are out at the moment doing various shopping. Kenthis15, I looked up quakes like Northridge and didn't realize how much lower their magnitudes were. I was wrong. California hasn't had a 7.8 since the San Francisco quake. Sorry. Yeah, it's a common mistake because most people think it's linear. So they think, 7.8, that's pretty similar to a 7.2, right? They're not far off on the scale. It's definitely a lot different. That's the problem. The only reason they use the magnitude scale is because of the massive wide range and energy release in quakes. You can't really put it on a linear. I mean, you could put it on a linear scale. Yeah, a 10.2 earthquake would probably ring the entire world like a bell and destroy most of civilization, just to be clear. You could theoretically go above a 10 on the scale. That's just sort of preliminary, but they seem to have marked it off pretty well. I don't know. I can't remember what the most powerful measured quake actually is. It might have been the San Francisco earthquake. Fukushima came close, that one. It was an 8.9, I think, if I remember correctly. So yes, serving chicken, waffles, and watermelon snack to kids when Black History Month starts, it is probably a faux pas. I would point out, though, that those poor kids are still eating swill no matter what the fuck they're served. And I can eat half of it anyway. You know how much food waste is in the average school? It's close in on 50%, just to be clear. Next news story from The Guardian, simping for their Marxist overlords. Opinion, U.S. Politics by Jan Werner Mueller. Conservatives angry about school indoctrination are telling on themselves. Ideologues like Ron DeSantis aren't angry at politics and education. They're angry their politics don't have a monopoly. You're not going to find much, to be honest, as a non-conservative. I'm not traditionalistic. I'm not religious. I'm not even a Christian. I side with conservatives. Well, I'm more conservative than the conservatives on guns and taxes, but I align with them with some issues. To be entirely fair, as a student that went, not that many years ago to a public school in Vermont, which is the bluest state in the union, sometimes the second, Hawaii sometimes edges it out, and Maryland is getting pretty close there at this point too. I can remember being in school. There's not a whole lot of traditionalistic conservative teaching outside of the sex ed and drug curriculums. Yes, When you're doing the DARE lesson special, or when you have to take health class where you learn the same shit that you already learned in elementary and middle school anyway, just like reading The Great Gatsby 4 fucking times. Thank you very much, English teachers. You're fucking sadists. Yes, that's the only time that you get a conservative or traditionalist, like a Reaganite education. Even in a blue state school, although maybe not one in necessarily the bluest area of the state, we were taught, just say no. You smoked weed, therefore you're going to end up smoking crack and stupid shit like that, which actually got me sent to the office one time because I chuckled and said it was propaganda. And I think that I was very forward thinking for doing so. I remember health class, taking a semester of that shit. And the insinuation was if you have sex, you'll get AIDS. They had a religious group and a quasi-religious group to tell us about why you shouldn't bother using condoms. You should just keep it in your pants. Like, we're teenagers, dude. We're high schoolers. Do you really think that that's happening? I was religious at the time and managed to lose my virginity at 15. So I think that ship sailed quite some fucking time ago. Just to be clear, I was not the party type. I was not going out of my way trying to socialize and flit about and try to find a date or for prom or anything like that. I'm assuming there was plenty of, the little in and out, as the British would call it, going on. Even there, we got that. Outside of that, you look at history. Math is just math. It shouldn't have any political message. Science, certainly. No, there was no traditionalistic message. One of my favorite teachers, Mrs. Rayford, who I believe, unfortunately, is deceased now. I think she's dead. She wasn't in great health even a few years after I had left, if I remember correctly. And if you're still alive, Mrs. Rayford, and happen to see this, I do apologize for making that presumption, but I think I did hear that you had passed away several years ago. She was a Catholic. Like when we went to her home for AP test cramming, which was not required, but was recommended. And she serves up a mean goddamn fucking lasagna, by the way. So nobody wanted to miss an episode of that. Her garlic bread was on point. Nick will back me up on this and already has. She had like Catholic iconography everywhere, crosses and angels and all this. So she was religious. But during the messaging in the class itself, it was evolution is real. Now the intelligent design thing, okay, we won't even discuss that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's mostly progressivism when you think about it. And so the idea that the indoctrination, why should indoctrination be balanced? There shouldn't be any indoctrination of children anyway. The fact is, this is just blocking a form of indoctrination, CRT, which is partially communist in origin. It's blatantly disrespectful to the civic underpinnings of the United States, which people would know if they still taught civics in schools post-1970s, by the way. It's blatantly wrong in every possible way, economically, socially, etc. It's crazy. And it shouldn't be taught. The idea that you would legitimize indoctrination by trying to balance the indoctrination or something like that is just, I don't know exactly what this fucker is getting at with this article, to tell the truth. The Patriot Chiro, Pharma and FDA love subsidizing school lunches. They love sick kids. Money is their goal, not health. Yeah, when our child is, of schooling age, if we're not homeschooling, definitely there's going to be a homemade lunch. There's not going to be some swill served up in a school. And I would say probably anything served in a Dutch context is probably healthier, just to be clear. Not a lot of soy and corn additives in the foods here. Eric writes, weird question. Given the choice, would you prefer a parfait or ambrosia? Take care, my man. Neither. They're too sugary for me. I would prefer, I don't know, a handful of peanuts or something. I'll take the peanuts or an orange. If I want something sugary, I'll just grab a piece of fruit. Doubt Shadow, out Peter Zion for good geopolitical analysis. Oh, check out Peter Zion for good geopolitical analysis. Transylvanian 90. Most powerful quake was the 1960 Chile one. 9.6 on the scale. Killed about 6,000. Sent tsunamis across the Pacific. 1964 Alaska one, a close second. I believe I've seen footage of that. I think In Search Of actually did a quake special once, and they had footage from the Alaska quake. Can't remember if it was 64 or if it was one from a bit before that, though. I think it might have been a little bit before, so it probably wasn't the big one. Doubt Shadow, opinions on the ancient mystery religions. Fascinating subject that I've covered in several occult videos. The Orphic, the Bacchic, etc. traditions, Eleusinian mysteries. I've talked about that before. There are different conclusions one can draw from them because our information about those traditions, sadly, is not quite perfect. Peter is my first name. The answer is Ron Jeremy. Norm MacDonald told a Rodney Dangerfield story on Howard Stern. I might be shadow banned, so I super chat. Thanks. Interesting. Lance Johnson. I heard the highest measured quake was 10.2 in Rutland. Evangelist Dr. Robert L. McKim Sr. My wife has thrown me out of the house. My apologies for that. Hopefully you have a shed or something. Just retire to your man shed until she's no longer angry. You know, sometimes people argue. It's a big problem. I don't know if you're making a joke or if you're being serious. It's the funniest part. Sometimes it just goes over my head. I don't even know. I'll assume it's a joke, but I don't want to assume that and then piss someone off. So next and final news story, by the way. The new GOP takes the country hostage with the debt ceiling. Why the Republicans' routine threat to wreck the economy rather than raise the borrowing limit could end differently this time. This time it's different. Here's the tell when you look at this article. This is from the New Yorker, by the way. When you see an article where it's like, well, this has happened 5 times before, but here's why this time is different. Normally it's not different. It's just the same bullshit that's gone on before. The fact is that the GOP controls the House right now, and the House controls the purse strings. Not only do they have the right to negotiate with Biden on budgetary concerns, they have a responsibility because it's why people goddamn elected him. The economy was the number one concern. Should they choose not to do this, most of them won't be reelected. Now, I don't care if all the unipartists go bye-bye, and only a handful of House Republicans that really make sense. You've got, in the Senate, you've got like Rand Paul and Massey and a handful of others. You got like 5 people that make sense. In the House, you got like a dozen of them, but they're more House members, and that's basically all you've got. MAGA still rules the day and is definitely not a flash in the pan the way the progressive movement, so-called Occupy, etc., have been, or even the Tea Party is definitely more beefy than them, but it still does not have a majority. That being said, the Republican House leadership has to negotiate with Biden. They can't say, imagine what would happen tomorrow if McCarthy said, you know, we're just going to raise the debt limit normally, give Biden everything that he wants, give the Dems everything that's in their budget, and we'll just throw some pork barrelism in and sweeten the deal that way. We'll make the budget even larger. Yeah, that would be really, really great for the results in the 2024 election. It wouldn't make you look like a bunch of fucking dumb cunts now, would it? So that's not going to happen, number one. Number two, the idea that having a negotiation over the debt limit, which Biden is technically taking people hostage with by preventing negotiation. He's saying, I'm not going to talk to you. He's the only one there that's not willing to negotiate. But even if it weren't, let's say the House Republicans said they didn't want to negotiate and said, well, unless he meets all of these demands, we're not going to vote for it. Who cares? We've hit that limit and had a government shutdown before. Did the nation stop existing? Did the world end? Did it irreparably damage us in some tangible manner? Or is it a bunch of funny money anyway and nobody gave a shit and went back to work and did their thing? Some government workers got furloughed. Okay. How terrible. Ozzy's Robots, do you watch Dore? He gets away with a lot of crap. Jimmy Dore is one of the few liberal commentators that at least sometimes makes sense, along with Bill Maher. There aren't many others, to be clear, and they're considered sellouts because anytime they make sense, it's because they're deviating from the far left. Maher gets rambled at constantly, and Dore too, by simply pointing out, hey, the Democratic Party just did something unwise that is likely to piss people off. Hey, maybe we could stop insulting people in flyover states. Maybe you could stop insulting people who don't have a PhD. Maybe you should stop insulting people and calling them extremists for having a minor deviation of view from you on climate change or guns or something like that. That's when they run up against friction. Any other time, they agree generally with the liberal/leftist core, and there's no problems. You know, it's just standard commentary. Only when they rock the boat do they get any pushback. By the way, I experience this too. When I'm making commentary on guns, I don't have any negative comments because most of you already agree with me. Even if you believe in gun control, you don't generally, most of you probably don't believe the current level of U.S. gun control is appropriate, especially in the wake of Bruin. When I talk about taxes, Saying I want lower taxes, it's a fucking no-brainer. No, the liberals don't disagree with that. It's a universal issue. Everyone thinks that they should pay less. Most of them believe that the other guy should pay more, but I deviate from my main point. But if I talk about my belief that women should be able to abort in the first trimester because I don't want the government getting in their pants. If I say that I have no problem with people who are transgendered, I have a problem with some of the after effects of that, but it doesn't morally indignify me or something, I realize that there are people that I'll run up against because part of my audience is more traditionalistic than I am. It's the same thing that everyone else who does commentary to any audience over 2 people ever experiences. Be funny, you're just starting out, you got like 10 people subscribed to you, and then you drop to 5 the next day because you uttered an opinion that those 5 people didn't like. Lance Corporal Veteran, tips on companion planting with cabbage. I believe basil, if I remember correctly, is a good companion for that. And chamomile is a good companion for everything because it helps plants resist disease. I don't know by what methodology, but somehow it just works. Plus anything that snails and slugs don't like, although you can just throw a bunch of copper pennies around. By the way, zinc pennies, I don't know that they work so well. I believe that the thin copper coating on the outside doesn't do as much as the older pennies would. Those are too valuable to sprinkle around your garden, so you may just want to use salt pellets. Don Jones, are you an expat? If not, will you move to New Hampshire? Live free or die? Your sister state of Vermont. I'm kind of an expat. I'm residing in the Netherlands. I almost said New Zealand there. I'm glad I'm in the Netherlands as opposed to New Zealand right now, given their current state of leadership. And probably the weather. I think the Netherlands is rather nice. Ivy everywhere and shit. Although I do like sheep. They make cute noises and they're fuzzy and, they don't attack people. So you can pet them on the little head and they do that stupid face that they make. It's the same fluoride face you get for most of the world human population too, just to be clear. But if I move back to the United States on a more permanent basis, and I do intend to do so, I want to split my time between the U.S. and the Netherlands. New Hampshire really does have a draw to me because I was born there. I was actually born in Hanover, not in Vermont, believe it or not. Spent the first day or 2 of my life in New Hampshire. Always liked it. You'd be closer to the seacoast. It's basically Vermont, but pro-gun. Less taxes generally, although property taxes are a bitch, so maybe you want to rent if you're there. The Grizzly, my hope is that the Republicans embrace populism and Trumpism. My expectation is that they are going to destroy the mainline Republican Party before that happens in an attempt to thrill the populism in its crib. We'll see what happens with the GOP. They're very good at stealing defeat from the jaws of victory. My hope is that they're willing to reform. They were almost there already. I was praising them for this for several years. Like, look, this party has gotten over its schismatic bump in the road. It's modernizing to populism, which is what is needed right now. The Democrats were stuck in the 90s. Now the Democrats are going back even further. They're trying to act like it's the 1930s, and the Republicans are desperately trying to claw their way back to being the party of George Bush. Well, I'm not going to support the Republicans if they become the fucking party of George Bush again, just to be clear. By the way, please don't send any more super chats because I have other things to do. By the way, we're making pizza tonight. I make my own sauce. By the way, I do not use anything from a can. We will buy the crust pre-made. Everything else we're doing here. Nice olives. I'm thinking fungi and black olives. Zwart olives. Mary Sturk, thanks for entertaining me every morning. You're very welcome. Sebastian Monroe, thoughts on Almanac website, looking at planting. Almanacs can be fun. They're not 100% reliable with regards to weather predictions. The Grizzly. Also, what do you think of Peter Zian's take on deglobalization being inevitable and renationalizing is all but imminent at this point? I think it is, and if properly managed, it's a good thing. We can still have world trade and world travel, and we don't need the extension of globalism that we've had over the last half century. My fear is that it may not go so smoothly. That is, that countries will say globalism doesn't work, so we're renationalizing it. Instead of retaining an attempt at diplomacy and trade and travel and stuff, so people can, go around the world, have fun, meet other people, talk to other people, you're going to end up with more censorship and war or something like that. That would be just as bad as globalism and the direction it's moving us in. The Patriot Chiro. Neem oil and dipple dust are my go-to for garden pests. My potatoes are popping off. Also, my avocado tree is flowering. If you've got an avocado tree, then you're definitely in a nicer climate than I've generally been in. Yes, by the way, tall oaks, I get the reference, peanut and pizza and walnut sauce. I get the whatever it was, cosmic ping pong or whatever it was reference. I actually can't eat walnuts at all, though. I'm allergic to them. Or supposedly. I had a salad a while ago. It was one of my favorites, actually. It had crushed walnut on top, and it had some sort of semi-sweet dressing, a vinaigrette of some sort, raspberry vinaigrette, and apple in it. And they had it at the local Albert Heijn, if I remember correctly. And I liked it. But then I ate it one time, and my tongue felt like painful and kind of swollen after I ate it. And I'm like, well, I know I'm not allergic to vinaigrettes and raspberries, and I'm not allergic to any of these greens because I eat this constantly and still do, by the way. I know I'm not allergic to apples, so that leaves basically one thing that could be causing this. I should probably not eat this salad again. And so I haven't. Unfortunate, since it was tasty, I will admit. Bob Rogers, Miss Solar Terror, Doge says he wants to lick your face at Styx Hexen Hammer. Oh, goodness. Yes, I realize that a lot of people, their pets like to watch these broadcasts, especially when the cat is up here. I've had, God, dozens of people, I think, at this point. They show me pictures, their cat or their dog or whatever. The ferret is up in the screen trying to paw something. It's always amusing. I like it when people show me their pets, especially cats. I'm partial to those, I will say. I'm a cat person. No offense to Doggo. Anyway, I think that I'm going to go offline here. We're running up on an hour, and I do have some other things to do. Again, I will be making a pizza salsa Mario later tonight. By the way, at some point, I want to upload a really funny rant. I got the idea of, like, Luigi is ranting at Mario about his mom walking in on him getting screwed by another dude and, like, trying to tell him his mom's going to kill herself or something. So they need to make an excuse about why that happened, and claiming, like, the mafia dude was just raping him because, you know, he didn't pay up. He didn't pay up what he owed or something, and just going off the chain about his cousins reacting about his spaghetti and shit like that. And I think I'm going to do that as an exclusive because I have a feeling I wouldn't be allowed to put that on YouTube, just to be clear. So yeah, just a teaser for something in the future that I'll do when I'm feeling in a wild and woolly mood. That's about all. Peace out.